Okay. We're going to begin public comment. We're going to start with people who are here in the room, and then we'll turn to people on Zoom. If you're on Zoom and you would like to give public comment, please use the raise your hand function. And we'll try to call on people in order. If you are in the room and want to give public comment, when we call on you, please take a seat at the table where it says public comment. That way the camera can capture you and people watching on Zoom can see you. Anyone who's giving public comment, please give your full name. And if you're representing an organization, please give the name of that organization as well. And please keep in mind that you can still submit written comments. We will distribute all the written comments to the committee members and we will post them on the website after the meeting. So please keep in mind when you submit public comments, not to include your personal medical information, because just don't include anything you don't want on a public website. I'll also add that we are going to post the full recording of today's meeting on the website. May take us a couple of days to chop it up, but we will be posting the entire meetings and we'll also be distributing the slides. All right, so is there anyone in the room who would like to begin public comment? Kristen? Oh, okay, Erin. Oh, okay.
All right, hi everybody. I am Erin Loves. Professionally, I'm a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, but the organization I sort of broadly represent here today is motherhood and parent. I have a 26-year-old son with autism, and that's what brings me here today. I think I would really want to start by just thanking all of the members of this community for doing this vital work. It's very important. It's very important to individuals on the spectrum. And the mission of the I-ACC, or the I-ACC is critically important at this time. So I'm grateful for your commitment to it. I think it's important, and one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention today is just that we have to be so careful about using autism as a political tool. Not that anyone here has, but it's just happening the last year and a half. And I've watched some of the harms from that unfold, in my own family. So my son Tom is 26 years old, and he's really struggled with this emotionally. He's struggled with the negative statements about autistic adults that have come from HHS, discussions about vaccines, Tylenol, and some of the other things that are proposed causes are very triggering for him now. I think that, these have unfortunately only served to further stigmatize people with autism. And one thing that I think we haven't captured is how that impacts them. So he was, and we've worked so hard on this for so long to accept himself as an individual who is autistic, to be able to disclose that in a workspace or in a community. And, I think as a result of this past year, it's really sort of kind of driven him back into the closet and being more fearful of being open about that. And I think that his experience is kind of a direct consequence of HHS's failure to really counter misinformation with evidence-based messaging. So that he's not alone. So I think that's a very important thing here. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up to you guys today is how you communicate the research agenda, because bringing back the conversation around evidence-based research, evidence-based science, and looking at autism from the lens of an evidence-based perspective is so very important. One thing I wanted to also bring up to you that's very important to him is how we use healthcare data in research. And something that's really upsetting to him is the proposed, it isn't clear where they're going to go with this, but the National Registry for Autism. And that any national registry must comply with existing laws protecting patient healthcare data. And that the healthcare data of people with autism should be treated equally, and that it should not be exempted from existing privacy protections in furtherance of any agenda from HHS to find data supporting predetermined conclusions about cause. And I think that it would be helpful if this committee could somehow reflect that in the agenda going forward. I think it's also important to take a stance in defense of the dignity, autonomy, and civil rights of autistic individuals and their families. I do fear that the important work that you guys are going to do here will have a diminished impact if we're not actively and effectively communicating it to the public. Unlike unscientific wellness misinformation, evidence-based research does not offer easy answers. It often generates more questions than it resolves, which is precisely the nature of the scientific process. Those questions generate discovery, but we can't sit back and hope that the science will speak for itself. We have to actively promote it with a positive and assertive voice. And so I would urge this committee, as you invest the time and energy into creating the research agenda, which is so important, you also think about novel strategies to communicate that agenda to the public. Whether it's social media or the media who are here today, we have to cut across generations. We have to cut across all types of divisions within the autism community to communicate this. And we have to challenge myths that have taken hold in public discourse. Evidence-based science must be communicated with the same energy and reach as the misinformation that is countering. So more than ever, we need a scientific research agenda held to the highest standards, one that is evidence-based and focused on treatments that improve functioning and is oriented toward meaningful inclusion and quality of life for all people living with autism. And we need the voice of this committee to make that agenda heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Essex.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here today. Thank you for the invitation to speak, Allison. I'm honored to be here and encouraged by the shared commitment to advancing autism research in ways that truly support the community. My name is Kristen Essex. I'm the Executive Director of the Organization for Autism Research. And I have my associate here, Kimberly Ha, who's OR's Senior Director of Research and Programs. We've heard a lot about autism research today. And where we'd like to see it go. But the common thread of everything we discussed today comes down to what Dr. Zachary Williams said, that the ultimate goal is to improve the lives of autistic individuals. And really, that's what we focus on at OR. OR is a national nonprofit that was founded in 2001 by parents and grandparents of autistic individuals. Our mission then and now is clear: to apply research to the science, to the challenges of autism. A large part of what we do is to fund applied autism research. When we evaluate research proposals, we often ask one simple question: does this project have the potential to immediately improve the quality of life of those living with autism today? That focus of translating research into real-world impact has guided our work for more than 2 decades. We have proudly funded more than 160 pilot studies, some of which have led to widely adopted evidence-based programs, such as the Peer Social Skills Program and the Unstuck and On Target Executive Functioning Curriculum. By strategically investing in early stage research that addresses community identified need or helps promising ideas take root and go on to scale, expand, and influence the broader field. The projects we fund focus on challenges that affect everyday life, such as physical and mental health, education and employment, social communication, behavior, and parent-teacher training. We also refine our research priorities each year to reflect emerging needs, including recent emphasis on community-based research, older adults, intersectionality, diversity, and inclusion. Our seed funding helps launch innovative research and research careers, creating a pipeline where evidence often leads to larger grant funding. By supporting early career investigators, we drive innovation and stimulate growth within the autism research community. We're seeing an increasing demand for applied research. Our research competition just closed this last Monday, saw an 80% increase in applications compared to 2024, highlighting the growing need for applied community-focused research. At a time of shifting priorities, OR remains steadfast in its commitment to applied research. We believe our mission is more important than ever to ensure there is continued attention to research that improves lives today. Beyond funding research, or supports autistic job seekers, provides scholarships for post-secondary education, including life skills and four-year colleges, and delivers quality evidence-based resources used in homes, schools, and communities to support the lifespan of autism. But progress in these areas is ultimately grounded in a strong, well-coordinated research ecosystem, one that is now facing critical gaps. The formal federal I-ACC gathered comprehensive data across public and private research funders while bringing together experienced researchers and advocates. That balance of perspectives was key to developing strategic plans that reflected the full ecosystem of autism research. Yet today, some of these perspectives, particularly from advocacy organizations and independent funders, are less represented than they should be. We are here today because we believe the work of this committee matters. The goal of offering a strategic plan that counterbalances what the federal I-ACC will offer is critical to shaping the future direction of autism research. This newly formed committee brings deep expertise across many areas of research. This comprehensive strategy reflects the broad landscape of autism research, including work that directly improves the daily lives of autistic individuals and their families. As this committee continues to grow, we believe its work and impact will be strongest when informed by organizations operating at the intersection of research and advocacy. As the only organization that focuses solely on applied research, or would welcome the opportunity to contribute our unique perspectives to help ensure that research priorities remain connected to practical outcomes for autistic individuals and their families, while mobilizing BOR's national network to amplify I-ACC's work and strengthen its connection to the community it serves. Autism research has made significant advancements over the past several decades, but the true measure of that progress is seen in its ability to help people live fuller, more supportive, and more independent lives. Thank you again to everyone for your commitment to this work. We look forward to working with all of you to advance autism research and improve the quality of life for autistic people and their families.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to give public comment in the room? Do you also want to speak? Other people?
Yeah, Adam Fine.
Okay, so Adam, fine, you have to promote them, so. it makes
He
it
doesn't need to
better.
unmute.
Okay, so Adam Fine, if you could unmute yourself and just give your name and organization if you're representing one, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Adam Fine, and you did pronounce that correct. Thank you. I represent really myself as an autistic advocate. I work with many organizations. However, I'm here speaking as an actually autistic person. I did not get the chance to see Dr. Williams speak, so the time that I've been able to watch after my full employment has been limited. And I'm just here because I noticed that there's only one autistic board member, which gravely concerns me because wrong premises lead to wrong practices. And the premise that autistic people, plural, is not necessary to run an autism organization or a committee like this or any organization involved in autism. That's a wrong premise that has lethal consequences for the autistic community, whether it be abuse, whether it be trauma, whether it be the very known high suicide rate that I believe stems from a conversation about us without us. So it is my hope that this committee will very much, with full heart and compassion for the autistic community, consider us not just essential on the menu, but at the table as equals, and see that we have autistic board members rather than mere tokenism. It's the only way that we're going to succeed together.
Thank you, Adam. Next we have
And we have Matthew Belmonte.
Matthew Belmonte. If you could please unmute yourself.
Hello. Yeah.
Sorry.
Still lost him.
Oh, did we lose Matthew?
Let's see.
Wow. Who's that?
That was good.
Read
Yeah.
that.
Good.
Sorry
Am I
about
back?
Yes,
Okay, great. I think I've just got audio, not video, right? Uh,
yeah.
okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and kudos to you for putting together this shadow committee in such short order. Um, I speak as an autism neuroscientist and research advisor with the Comdeal Trust in Bangalore, also as a failed nominee to the current iteration of the I-ACC, uh, but also and primarily as brother and uncle to two adults with profound autism who reside in Fairfax County, just across the river from where you're having this meeting. We're living through an interlude of profound public uncertainty about science and scientists, and mistrust in authority and institutions in general. The very existence of this shadow autism coordinating committee attests to this dysfunctional state of affairs. In autism, perhaps as in no other area of policy, this mistrust is deeply rooted. I grew up in the aftermath of psychiatrists versed in Bettelheim who had laid blame on my mother for my brother John's autism, and with parents who tied themselves in knots to comply with special diets and other research protocols that often had more to do with advancing scientists' careers than with advancing quality of life for families affected by autism. After Bettelheim, it was difficult to witness, and so many of my fellow neuroscientists, a similar ideological faith in autism as a disorder fundamentally and exclusively of social cognition, which sidelined the experiences of families, teachers, and autistic people themselves, attesting to autism's many aspects beyond theory of mind. As a member of the Scientific Review Council at Cure Autism Now, I saw what was possible when families' experience-informed advocacy brought rigorous science to bear on ideas and hypotheses that previously had been considered fringe. Sensory, motor, gastrointestinal, sleep, and immune aspects of autism all are now mainstream. Key to this paradigm shift was listening to reports from families, considering how these observations might be consistent with theory, and defining research questions and hypotheses to fill the gaps. Sometimes, families' observations lead to facile conclusions. People can be convinced by individual anecdotes more than comprehensive statistics. Association can be mistaken for causation. So it's important to distinguish the observations from the false interpretations. Here's an example. Now, none of us here believe that autism is caused by vaccines or paracetamol. But if we credit parents' reports that in some autistic children, children who were going to be autistic whether vaccinated or not, autism's first visible symptoms seemed to them to manifest in response to vaccination, then what testable hypotheses might we develop about how autism interacts with immune challenge? Here's another example. None of us here believe that all or most or any large proportion of profoundly autistic people who speak few or no words can express complex language through keyboards. But if we credit parents' reports that some autistic children seem to understand language in disproportion to their ability to produce it, which are consistent with findings from my group and from Helen's group, then what testable hypotheses might we develop about how autistic executive and motor function interact with language production, and whether different communication therapies might be co-created and targeted according to such receptive expressive disparity? These are but two examples. They might not pan out. My point, though, is that we must be respectful of such observations from stakeholders, especially from those many who, bearing the weight of a new diagnosis, are confused and seeking information. These people are looking for an authority who will listen to them. And if we scientists write them off, if we don't listen, if we assail not just the unfounded concern, but the person who voices that concern, if we seem to be gunning down not just their beliefs, but their champions, then we will be driving them even further into the arms of those champions, the medical quacks and political demagogues who do listen. I implore the Independent Autism Coordinating Committee, therefore, to approach its relationship with the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee not purely as an adversary, but also as a complement. Bad science must be called out, but points of convergence also must be recognized. Some may be too wrapped up in their preconceptions to admit any challenge. Others may be willing to meet us, though, if only we will meet them halfway by acknowledging their concerns, even when we deem their imperatives useless, wasteful, diversionary, or downright dangerous. This empathy is hard work, especially when we're all so angry at the damage that is being done to science policy. It's easy to be angry. I know. I'm angry too. This is why I'm asking you all to hold in mind what we have in common with these people with whom we so profoundly disagree. Let's remember that every loving parent wants the best for their child. We all share this value, though we may differ profoundly on its implications. If we can begin a dialogue from this shared purpose and involve stakeholders, not just as passive consumers, but as active partners in formulating research questions and agreeing and pre-registering the methods that will answer these questions, then stakeholders will own and trust the results, and they will begin to trust us again, too. Thank you for listening.
Matthew. Is there anyone else who's on Zoom who would like to give public comment? It appears right now
Oh,
that,
there's one, Paul Silver.
okay, Paul Silver.
Hi, I'm Paul Silver. I'm a self-advocate myself. Um, when I heard when Secretary Kennedy was being nominated and sworn in, I was like really in a very angry mood because I had for the past 10 years, I had this personal battle with a anti-vaxxer. Well, actually, I ended the relationship 10 years ago, but it still haunts me because the last straw with this person was that because I'm Jewish, she blew a shofar into a crucifix cross, which is anti-Semitic, but really hurtful. And lately, I have been seeing anti-Semitic imagery with the anti-vaccine movement. Case in point, our own before he became Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. blamed Asians and Jews for the COVID vaccine pandemic. And my hope is with you guys, is that you guys will refute any negative scientific research that supposedly RFK in the Human Health and Human Service Department comes out with that you could counteract with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
And then Nikki.
Nikki, what?
Nikki.
Okay, someone named Nikki.
This one.
Nikki, if you can hear us, can you please unmute and you can begin your public comment?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, I'm watching this from Australia, and I have a couple of points to make. Firstly, I'm absolutely astounded about the focus that America has on ABA when there's no conclusive science that suggests ABA has long-term outcomes. In fact, the advocates across the globe are constantly pushing up against that as a source of therapy. The other thing I'm really concerned about is outcomes and the things that we're measuring. I really think the majority of the things discussed in this meeting as far as outcomes is actually missing a point of autistic voices across the globe. I don't understand with all of this science why we're not looking more at neurobiology, neuropsychology, We're not looking at physiology. We're not looking at the right loading. So we know that autistic people have different chemical responses. And when we're medicating, we're not looking at metabolization, we're not looking at synthesis, we're not looking at the incoming information before the outcoming information. You're still very much at nervous system and behavior. Before behavior, you need to make sure that people have proper synthesis and metabolization of all of those neurochemicals in order to better function. So if someone hasn't slept properly or doesn't have the right access to dopamine due to even iron deficiency, behavior comes long after that. So all of this research seems to put the emphasis back on the autistic person, autistic child, and stays in this nervous system psychological basis. It feels very moot. There's a lot of money funding the wrong elements, and we're not seeing those outcomes. We're still seeing autistic people living in poverty. We're still seeing high suicide rates. We're not seeing outcomes. When you have an industry that's worth billions and trillions of dollars across the globe, we're not seeing those outcomes. So we don't see them in Australia. We have the highest amount of funding per disability with NDIS and DSP. The outcomes aren't still there. So I really believe scientists are missing the opportunity to measure the right things for the proper outcome. I feel like we're still stuck 20 years ago, despite everyone assuring themselves that we're progressing. We're progressing far too slow, and it's costing lives. It's costing quality of lives.
Thank you, Nikki. Is there anyone else who has raised their hand?
No.
Okay, is there anyone else in the room who wants to? All right, so,
Oh, wait, no, one more.
all right,
Nina Sanai.
okay, Nina, if you can unmute.
And they lowered their hands.
Oh, they lowered their hand. Okay, well then we will.
Raise that.
That's the thing.
Okay, now, Nina,
Yes. Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So my name is Nina Sani, and I am the founder and facilitator of an employment-related support group for parents of teenagers and adults who are trying to navigate Maryland Vocational Rehabilitation Services right now. And I started my group about 2 years ago because I realized there was a huge need in my group is based in Montgomery County, Maryland. There's a huge need in Montgomery County, Maryland for guidance for in the community in this area. So I've been doing this for 2 years now. I really feel like it's an essential type of support that is being offered through the kind of assistance that I provide. And, I'm open to, sharing a lot of my, what I've learned. I support people in advocating in their own individual cases, as well as learning ways how to advocate for systemic level changes with the vocational rehabilitation system, none of which they knew about prior to meeting with me. To share some about my background, I used to work full-time as an employment advocate at Protection Advocacy for People with Disabilities. And at the time, I received formal training about how the vocational rehabilitation system is truly supposed to work, which, if it worked the way how I was taught that it could make a huge difference in the lives of families who have adults with autism, or even also teenagers as well. So that's how my passion for what I do now first started. So, I'm open to any ways I could, contribute to, people could learn from anything that I've been doing. my model. I do think that people have been able to better access services that are that they're looking for via this type of a model in comparison to, if they had just been trying to look for assistance just completely on their own, employment related assistance specifically. So just wanted to share about my group and that I'm willing to share as someone who founded this group, that I would be willing to support any efforts made via this additional group as well.
Thank you, Nina. That
Now we have Bill. Bill, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, or others.
Welcome to the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead, Bill.
Oh, yes, thank you. Hi, my name is Bill Afkovich. I'm a retired PhD biochemist, was in the biotechnology tool space for about 40 years. Want to congratulate you all for getting together and pulling together this alternative, very important committee. I really appreciated the talks that were given. Compared to the problems I worked on in my industrial career, this one's pretty big. And I just wanted to comment, I don't have any original scientific or even policy contributions to make. One of the previous public commenters emphasized the need for advertising what you're doing, public relations. I think that's extremely important. There's great science going on, great medicine that's going on. And unfortunately, I think as scientists, we are more hesitant to be our own advocates unless we're 99.999% sure. And that's good in the scientific literature. But I think, as the previous commenter made, talking to people and, considering the fact that most Americans can't read above a sixth grade level, taking extreme efforts using social media, whatever, to advertise the work that you're doing, to advertise the kind of research you're doing, to try to break it down to something that the average American can understand, even if they don't get the technical details. And it does require some risk insofar as, we don't have all the answers. It's going to take very thorough and detailed studies to get an answer. But even saying, hey, here's where we're going. What does it mean when we found all of these genes that are involved in autism? It gives a counter to those people who say, oh, it's caused by vaccines. So I think, advertising even science or thinking that is less than 99.9% nailed down has value. Unfortunately, most Americans think that science is about certainty when it's more about dealing with uncertainty. And then the second comment, and I'll get off, is I wasn't sure who the other commenter was. I believe his name was Adam Fine, or maybe it was Matthew Fine. But I wanted to say that I thought his comments about actively engaging with the interagency autism coordinating committee were very, very well founded. I'm tired of reading comments that say there's proof that it's not caused by vaccines. I think we need to engage with those comments in a broader and deeper conversation instead of a one-liner. It's not this, it's not this. It goes back to the previous commenter's statements. If it's not those, then what it could be. Putting up a roadmap without the fine detail that's needed by a research committee or a planning committee, putting up a roadmap of saying, here's the places we are attacking, here's where we think it is possibly important. With that, I'll again congratulate you all for pulling this together, and I enjoyed listening in.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
We have time for two more.
3 people left. Stephen? Okay, these 3. Stephen Cap?
This is a comment that I submitted, so is it redundant to make it now as well?
Here on, you might as well. But
Well,
we
I
did
said,
get your comments, Steve. We did distribute your comments to everyone on the committee and they'll be posted on the website, but you should go ahead anyway.
okay, well, for anyone present, I just said that as a US citizen and autism researcher and advocate, I urge the I-ACC to commit to a formal policy of having at least 3 autistic members. It is important to represent the autistic community beyond one white male academic psychiatrist. It is also important that not all autistic members are academic researchers, just as the lay broader autism community is represented by the historically non-autistic family-led organization, Autism Society of America. That would be consistent with the Autism Cares Act for the I-ACC, which in 2024 had 7 public autistic members and 1 federal autistic member, and still has 3 public autistic members, many of them non-academics. Currently, there are at least 3 non-autistic parents of autistic people on the I-ACC, and bringing in 3 autistic people would keep a balance, whether or not they have autistic children. I think it helps if they, like the autistic community, have ideological diversity, while all committed to science and the quality of life of autistic people and our families. And as an example, I recommend Jenny May Fawn, an autistic scientist who straddles between basic and psychological science, who had served on the I-ACC and has served on the Autism Science Foundation's HERD, Healthy Engagement and Autism Research Dialogue Group. She's an autistic mother of an autistic son with intellectual disability, and she also has another autistic son without intellectual disability, and she's a bridge builder, as seen through but not limited to HERD, and as assistant director of community engagement at the Center for Adaptive Systems of Brain-Body Interaction. Groups such as the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network and the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, but not limited to those, would be good to include under inclusive conditions. I said about that, if that that it will have more, the body will have more respect and influence in the diverse autism community, especially the non-MAHA parts of it. If it includes, progressive pro-science autistic people, but to do so, it must have a decision-making process that works toward genuine consensus through collaboration and compromise, or allow respectful disagreement at times from members, not suggesting all members sign on to a position they do not believe or to which they cannot commit, and that there's power and progress in truly shared goals. And I know the scope of the I-ACC has been discussed, so in that there's discussion about the I-ACC acting beyond matters of science and treatment and having a larger scope than before. So if it does so in a matter, on matters in which I-ACC members disagree, it may be worth considering whether the organization also takes a broader scope, depending on the issue. If it's services, employment, or housing, it might be an area that could achieve consensus. Well, it might not be an area that achieves consensus, actually, on the I-ACC, if it actually does represent the autism community ideologically more broadly. And so important areas to consider for scope and decision making and representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, John Haggerty?
Right, is that working?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Yes, and I just want to empathize and thank you all for your efforts and time in getting all this together. I'll keep mine brief and happy to follow up later. So I'm a assistant professor in psychiatry studying autism and also an autism advocate and parent. I really want to emphasize, a lot of the limitations and things that have really affected, especially clinical research, has been limitations in the clinical trial designs. We've talked about some of the outcome measures today, which is a very large area for that, for biomarkers. But I think we also, through these collaborative efforts, and should have more focus also on combination therapies, especially between speech, between behavioral, pharmacological. We often are trying to do our best in these clinical trials to account for and feel like we're controlling as much of differences in community therapies that individuals are getting. But we also know that any individual therapy, say a child getting some sort of pharmacological intervention, may directly then change their cognitive behavioral state in terms of whether they're going to be receptive to those behavioral interventions as well. And so I think going forward, any type of resources to help with clinical trial design, to help with developing those collaborative multi-site networks, because as these trials get more complex, they'll need more subjects, they'll need more resources, should be a big focus that will hopefully help address some of the heterogeneity, but a lot of the limitations and signals that we've been getting from the research that have just been difficult to really account for and explain on the back end.
Thank you, John. Okay, for the last public commenter,
Amy Gravino.
Amy.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for your efforts and your work to put this committee together. I really appreciate it. My name's Amy Gravino. I'm a relationship coach at the Rutgers Center for Adult Autism Services, and I'm an autistic adult working in the field of applied behavior analysis. And so my concern really stems from, this was addressed earlier, and I was glad to hear the discussions about the companies that have been kind of taking over ABA steadily, specifically private equity. I am deeply, significantly concerned about things that I have been hearing. And most notably, there was something that I heard recently that one such person at one of these companies created a spreadsheet to determine the worth of a child. And they're deliberately making it so children are dependent on services longer in order to make more money off of a child. And to me, this is the complete antithesis of what the science of behavior analysis is, what it's supposed to be. Any behavior analyst worth their salt should be trying to work to make themselves obsolete. So I'm just wondering, I'm hoping that this committee will be able to address that, because there's no universe in which I'm going to hear the words "the worth of a child" and think of money. That's not how my mind and my heart work, and I hope that's not how anybody at this table's minds and hearts work. Because I mean, obviously there are financial concerns. I don't mean to diminish that, but it is, we're talking about, as we're saying, individuals who need help, who we're trying to improve the quality of life for, and it is heart-wrenching to me to hear that this is what is happening. And so I'm really hoping there's a way that this committee can address this role that private equity has taken, and how we can, if we're looking to make these changes, one of these has to be, we have to hold up the science as what is meant to be, and divest it from private equity. So that's just really where my one of my great concerns is at this moment. And I hope you'll all be able to look at that. And I thank you again all for your very hard work.
Thank you, Amy. Okay. We're going to move into the period for discussion and next steps and committee business. I would like us to actually start by talking about some of the issues that were raised both at the table and in the written comments that we received and that the committee members all read, which is to think about not only the topics that came to the table today, but the topics that are missing from the table today? Where are the gaps in what we have spoken about? And what are the organizations or the individuals who can help us to address those gap areas?
Well, I think it's a no-brainer that we must urgently take up the idea of adding more autistic people to our group. I think we heard from the public comments, we heard from Zach this morning. I think I think people from the self-advocacy community have a great deal to offer us and to complement the kinds of perspectives we bring. So I would say, I think that's an urgent issue, and I don't, I'm not sure anyone would disagree.
Helen, how do you decide who represents the autism community as a self-advocate?
Well, I would say we should focus on adding to the community people who can contribute to the primary mission that we've undertaken, which is the focus on science, as opposed to, some of the broader issues that are in the community. So I think we do have now quite a number of pretty distinguished autistic researchers. And I would recommend that we look to that part of the community. I don't think, I think we want people in this group who could really contribute. Today was honestly the most exciting I-ACC meeting I've attended, and I was on it up to last year. And I think others who have been on the I-ACC would agree, even you, Tom. And I think it's because we do have a shared mission here. So I think the science is the driving force for this group at this.
So if one of our goals is to improve coordination and collaboration between and among the non-governmental funders, there are some that are missing. The Nancy Larry Marks Foundation is now a major player. The Marcus Foundation. I think it's interesting what we heard today from the Organization for Autism Research in regard to funding of applied science. And Ari is here. Ari is on the map. In San Francisco, but here. But I thought that was interesting. Research designed to designed to improve the daily lives of people with autism today.
Yeah. Applied research.
David, do you have something to say? You've been active in the chat.
Oh yeah, so I really appreciated everyone who was willing to come and talk with the committee and share their views, and also the people who wrote in. And I took the liberty of trying to organize the comments that we had, and I just put it in the chat. And I saw sort of 4 areas that people talked about. One is the composition and the activities of the committee. The second is that people put in a lot of specific areas of research focus that they think we should address, to your point, Allison, about what is potentially missing in terms of expertise or the types of science we were talking about. There was a third category that Aaron Lopes talked about and others hinted at, and Amy Gravino talked about, which is the protection of autistic people and increasing the understanding of the science as part of that. And a fourth area, which was probably the least populated, was improving the service system for autistic people. And I'm wondering if it would be, Allison, you did such extraordinary work with others to put this group together so quickly that normally sort of the purview and processes of this kind of group would have been like more articulated and written down. before we all got together. And so I'm wondering about what happens between this meeting and the next meeting and the composition, and what happens during that meeting. And maybe that is a way of kind of trying to back in to who should be on the, who are we missing that should be on the committee? What are the activities that we should engage in between meetings? And like, how should we be moving forward a coherent research agenda for private funders and for an administration that might at some point be willing to listen?
I think we have to keep in mind how, the genesis of this committee. It was really put together in response to what we saw happening at the federal I-ACC. The appointment of members who did not represent the breadth of views of the autism community and did not represent the latest science, and the desire to be able to counter that after they announced that they would meet on March 19th. So we were under some time pressure to put together a group that could meet on March 19th. I think the intention of this group has always been to expand, but we had to balance that with the logistical heavy lift of putting together a meeting in very short time frame. I will use this as an opportunity to thank the team that put together this meeting in a very short time frame. Our ASF staff, led by our events director, Katie Syme, CJ Volpe, and Alicia Halliday, who's hiding over there behind the column. Thank you. I think we felt a sense of urgency towards putting together a strategic plan and also countering any misinformation that might have come out of a March 19th meeting of the federal I-ACC. The federal I-ACC then canceled its meeting. But this group decided that given our sense of urgency, we wanted to meet. We were ready. We had experts who didn't need more prep time. And we wanted to meet. But I will tell you, it was a heavy lift to put this meeting together, including getting all the disclosures in and having all of the disclosures evaluated and reviewed by legal experts who could then offer us a determination letter with regard to conflict of interest. So I will say that any new members of this committee will have to go through that similar process. But it does take time. There are some administrative issues that we have to deal with in putting this committee together. But it has always been our intention to add additional members. I think we all recognize that not every topic is covered at this table, that there are clearly gaps, and that that's where we need to focus for the next meeting. I think today we spent the meeting with the 13 members who are here, talking about their research agenda. If there had been more members already appointed to the committee, they couldn't have spoken. There's no time. So I think the next meeting, we will focus on hearing from any new members who are appointed to this committee and addressing topics that we were not able to get to today.
So, first of all, thank you to the team at GL.
Yes.
Really awesome job in a very short time. When you asked me to attend, I was responding to the federal announcement. And I have to say, having been here for the day and listening to the conversation, I think there's a job to do here that has nothing to do with the federal committee. That even if they didn't exist, or if they do exist, I'm not sure they're going to answer the problem that we probably could answer. So I think you're onto a really good idea here to create something that's different. I don't know what to call it. Maybe we don't even need to tag it in any way to the federal committee. But it does seem like there is, from what we've heard today, a real need to find a way to coordinate actions better and to even capture the landscape of what's there. I think we still don't have a really clear picture of who's funding what and what that all looks like, and just, getting that picture. So that would be one thing. To David's point, I think it would behoove us to spend a little bit of time on what is the scope of this? What's the purview? Obviously, we could do anything, but we can't do everything. So what are the things that this group could be really helpful for? And, do we want to go down the route of services, or do we want to stay on the side of just funding science? How far that science scope should go? Those kinds of questions probably ought to be hammered out. And that will help us to know who needs to be in the room, who to include. I'd rather do that than sort of say, who do we want to include, and then try to define what we're all going to be doing. It'd be better to sort of get clear on what a group like this could do. Probably in a finite period of time. I don't think you want to put together something that's eternal, but say like over the next 12 to 24 months, what would be the task? And then it'll be a little easier to know who should be on the team.
So it sounds like you're saying we should first articulate a set of goals and then determine.
Yeah, I've heard a few things. I mean, I've heard that should we be the group that coordinates research? Should it be the group that becomes the credible source for information? Should it be a group that is there to respond to the federal committee with, whether it's through a partnership or through critiques or however we want to define it? I guess I'm just sort of pushing us to think pretty clearly about what's our agenda? What are we here for?
I would echo that because, for me, especially coming into this as private philanthropy relatively recently, it's so clear that there's this huge opportunity to coordinate. There are incredible needs, there are incredible opportunities. I mean, we've worked pretty closely with ARIA to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts, that we're really synergistic in the work that we do. And I think that they're just incredible opportunities, and defining that landscape of research that goes from very basic to implementation science, right? So, where do we want to live? But I think that it's important to understand how all those pieces connect. For me, it's important, I consider it important to know what other people are doing, because I want to complement that. I don't want to, it's a wonderful thing to move from being the dean of a medical school where you're competing with everybody to funding research where you really want to make sure that you push the field forward in a sort of collaborative manner. So for me, that's really what I think would be beneficial. I am in favor of changing the name. That came up also a couple of times. I'm worried that it's confusing to people. And just say it.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I just also want to agree with Tom that I think setting the scope of our efforts is going to be muddy. I was just, one of the things that kind of was most impactful to me, and I forget who put up the slide about the money going into ABA, for example. So ABA is an intervention that has a scientific literature behind it. So that would be in the purview of this organization if it's focused on research. But the societal implications and the implications on service systems and stressors, financial stressors of the kind of leveraging of ABA mandates to provide bad ABA to enrich, kind of private companies, that is maybe not the focus of research, but it's really important, urgent issue right now that's going to affect a lot of families. So I don't know how you cut that off. But I also just want to say there has been some talk about the politicization of autism, and I want to suggest that it's not just the MAHA people, that on the left and the right, there's been politicization of autism over recent years. The use of autism to advance very different, but ideological and political imperatives. And I would hope that no matter who we appoint or we invite to join us, we steer away from people who are kind of motivated primarily by political motivations.
I want to make sure I'm not overlooking people who are on Zoom. So Zach or Kristen, Matt. Okay.
Sorry, can I ask? Sorry. And I know I've been talking a lot, so are we thinking that this group will produce a report? the way that the I-ACC does about this is what we think the impactful research has been this year, and this is what we think the research priorities should be moving forward?
I mean, I personally think that's an important goal. I think bringing together the non-government funders and potentially inviting the modern industry, venture capitalists, to talk about where we think makes sense, where the opportunities for investment lie that will maximize impact for people with autism, both today and in the long run, makes sense. I think I mean, whether we decide we want to follow the federal I-ACC or not, I think this group would be able to offer an alternative strategic plan for autism investment that would provide Congress with an opportunity to make decisions based on the collective wisdom and expertise of the group that we have brought together, which I believe has a good amount of wisdom and expertise. I also think that having those plans, if we look back at our history, having those plans has served the community well. Tom put up a graph before that showed the changes in autism research funding. There were two early years, I think they were, when was the ARA funding?
05, 06, something like that. Or
So back when President Obama announced the stimulus package, they looked for projects that they referred to as shovel ready. But the autism community was able to take advantage of that because it had written a strategic plan for research, which we submitted and we deemed beaker ready. And so if you look again at that slide, you'll see that in those 2 years, there was a big increase in funding, and the I-ACC has shown that. Usually when it shows that graph, it sort of puts that in a different color, so as to say that don't expect that level of funding again. But I think that we should be able to offer Congress a plan. Should there be an opportunity for them to return to wanting to invest in autism science.
We could call it the 2029 plan.
I might step in as Joe. Joe was supposed to make a comment, but he has an interview right now, so I want to make sure we express this point.
Okay, just give your name.
Sorry, Delancey Allred, Autism Society of America. I run our policy at Autism Society. When talking about potential other members, I think we definitely agree on the need for a few more autistic voices. Tom, you asked about, who would be the best for that, and we work really close with Asan. I think they are definitely the main self-advocacy group out there, right? And they do a lot of work with us and other groups here. So I think they'd be a great addition, but I know they also want some more autistic voices here. I like the mention of Jenny McMahon. I think she'd be awesome, especially with her past experience. And I also think, the lack of diversity is quite apparent too. So that's something we should be aware of, right? We want to make sure we're representing the whole community. So just to make sure that we got that out there. Thanks for organizing this.
Thanks. So do we want to talk now about goals? I mean, group this together. What do we collectively think should be the goals of this committee? Like, I think we should write a plan, but do others think we should write a plan?
I would step back a little bit because I think there's lots of innovation that can occur in a non-research format. And so I think, and the pace of that innovation has to be so fast now that traditional research methods are probably too slow. And so thinking about people who are changing systems, building systems, changing payment models, somewhere around that kind of, and there are people working on that stuff now, trying to figure it out. And I think they're going to have a bigger impact sooner on kind of what the whole system is going to look like. And to not have folks who are innovating in those domains just feels like we're kind of stuck on the science side, which is not terrible because we need to do that. But I think we need to think about where innovation is happening today and think about kind of how to pull people in who are strong innovators in a variety of different places. Tom talked about payers, I think about hospital administrators who are having to deal with this. I think about people who are developing these outpatient mental health systems.
EMH administrators, right?
Yeah, it's just, it's just people who are thinking about how to solve the challenges.
John, maybe even if we're going to change our name, to work the word innovation into the name someplace. So we're not stuck in thinking that we're simply we're not just coordinating academic research, coordinating innovation broadly. That includes research from academia, but it could include developing a novel device or creating a new kind of biomarker, a local biomarker. I mean, there's just a bunch of things here that could be under that umbrella.
And those people want to go fast. The traditional science approach. I mean, I'm impressed by how far we've come really over time. But the speed that people can innovate, if they're not, forgive me, hamstrung by methodologies and kind of grant cycles. Not to ignore that, but just thinking about ways of leveraging that group of people to.
I think we have to be cautious about the rapid speed and innovation. I think the tale that Amy told us today is an important one. And there's so much of that goes on in the autism community. And it is about the gaps in terms of meeting the needs, really changing lives of so many people. Families see that their kids are still struggling and are where they were 20 years ago, but somebody comes along and says Lukeborn. Okay. And so I think we have a community that is so vulnerable. And so I would like to step back. My own thinking as I'm listening to you here is the biggest mandate that has been completely ignored by the federal committee is bringing in all the non-governmental funders, okay, who are now, many of them, not all of them, are sitting around the table. And as Allison showed us in her introductory comments today, that's rivaling what the federal government is doing. And what I'm hearing from Kelsey and I hear from Allison always, and we heard also from Matt, there's this thirst among all the private funders to have a forum, to get together and to plan strategically, which is not the same as a strategic plan, maybe, but to lead the way on this and for us to focus on that. And it would be great, Tom, if you disseminated to the group a little bit more background and information on, where BC. I'm scared of private equity. That's just my personal concern, but maybe I'm wrong. Where they can partner with the philanthropic funding that is going to move us forward, and help us see the gaps and how we might fill those gaps with the science and who's doing what, and an integrated vision for scientific progress on autism. So
Yeah, I agree completely with you, Helen. I mean, as excited as I am by some of the things Tom said, I would not want a huge focus of this committee to be about creating targets for BC or for brand new, doctors who are trying to make $1 gazillion. So I think that that's interesting partnerships, but I don't want it to be.
I actually think, I guess maybe I misspoke, maybe I didn't articulate it well. I want to know more about it, but I think Tom made an important point, which is that they don't know necessarily what the right pieces are. And so actually thinking about bringing them in and listening to where it is that all of you and us see the opportunities. You know, what do they need to hear from us? This is exciting area. Invest in it now because that there's more to do. And don't bother with topic X. Focus on topic Y. Okay, don't develop the next generation of facilitated communication. Develop something a little bit different and that is more scientifically grounded. So I do see that there's an opportunity. I think, I'm just asking for more background on what some of these companies are doing. That's all.
I'm gonna have to catch a plane, so I've got to run, but I love that idea. I think that this could be the forum for that. And I'm not sure that they need to be members, but in the same way we talked about having a particular breakout group that would focus on an area that could be developed. They are the engine for a lot of innovation. And not just here, but in cancer, immunology, across biomedicine. This is where the growth is. It's not in federal funding. And to some extent, it's happening in philanthropy, but philanthropy is never going to be able to catch up with the amount of investment that's coming from the private sector or strategic investment. So I think you want them at the table. That doesn't mean that they have to set the menu.
Or you want them to hear the ideas.
Yes, I want them to hear.
Right, and they want to hear those ideas.
Yes.
Because
that
Can I suggest that the through line, both for the proactive and the reactive parts of what I think this body can do well, the through line is the defense of evidence-based practices and the defense of scientific integrity. And then that applies both the reactive part, meaning it is inevitable that you will have to spend part of your time correcting misinformation that's coming out of the current government. And that's an important role, really important. On the proactive side, I think the defense of scientific integrity also should be, kind of the bottom line of what you're trying to do, because bringing together traditional academic scientific research with what Tom's talking about, the innovative commercial sector, right? Bringing that together would be something new and it could be something great, but only if it maintains that standard of evaluation based on scientific integrity. Because the reality is that the market will fund quackery, and already is, to the tune of trillions, right? The market will fund quackery as much as the market will fund genuine scientifically based medicine. So, you're not here to make anybody money, right? You're here to defend that which is support that which is and suggest all of those things, that which has scientific integrity, whether or not it takes the form of a commercialized venture or traditional scientific research. Also, I think it would be a terrible mistake to give up on the idea of further federal funding, future federal funding, and more federal funding. We are way behind compared to other, areas, cancer, et cetera, et cetera. When you look at proportion, when you look at prevalence, when you look at social cost of the issue, we're way behind, and it's been essentially flat for many, many years. In large measure, because the autism community has been so divided as to what more money should go towards, that the politicians have thrown up their hands and said, I don't want to do this. To the extent that this body can create a sense of that, source of scientifically valid information, it can also contribute, as you said, it can contribute to future increases in federal funding. 96% of all drugs patented in the United States the last 25 years started at the NIH. The NIH remains key. It's not the only place. Private funding.
Engine of discovery.
Exactly. So the private foundation funding terribly important, and the more it grows, the danger, by the way, as somebody who works on Capitol Hill, the danger is the more private foundation money is, the more the politicians say, we don't have to pay for this anymore.
I agree.
It's being paid for in the private sector. The idea in my view, is to produce a strategic plan and to put a price tag on it, which is, by the way, what the official government body is required to do by law. And I would suspect, from what I heard today, that that budget would be easily $1 billion a year, maybe more. And if you can annotate that, show that this is all good science, then you will end up, ultimately, you want to end up with all of it, of course, but you'll end up with a lot more public funding than you would have if you don't do that. And the last thing I'll say is in terms of the name. So it was originally my idea to call it what it's called now. But I'm not at all wedded to it, because I do think it can create confusion or appear to be somehow sort of falsely, competitive. But I think you could just change it to the Private Autism Coordinating Committee, because that's what you are. You are the private sector.
And
I would not take away the word coordinator, because I think that's really key.
I think the confusion was good.
You do?
Yeah, I think, the I-ACC has failed to deliver. And we're the I-ACC, and we are delivering. I think it's a good thing. I think it kind of shows that there was a need. If we change the name to something different, then it does, I think it loses that connection.
do anyone on Zoom want to opine on the name issue?
I've been talking to reporters for the past 2 weeks, and it has been incredibly confusing. And most of them just say, I'm just going to talk about federal versus independent and ignore the rest of the letters. And so while I very much understand the intention behind our choice of name and applaud that intention, it's been a mouthful, and it has been confusing to talk to people, even who have been very invested in understanding our group.
What about if we just used IN for independent, we could be enact, or like enact. Something like where you can say it differently, but I do like the independent, I like the coordinating, I like it, positioning it as either hopefully a collaborator, but also like a corrective, and pointing to the reason for its emergence. Maybe we could just somehow come up with a different way of saying it, so it isn't the same.
But
Change the
autism
name.
last.
I'm sorry.
They could do NCCA.
Independent Coordinating Committee for Autism. Well, that's big. I don't like that. Zach and Kristen, I don't want to overlook you guys because you're not here. Do you guys want to jump in?
I'll just jump in. Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry, Zach. I was gonna say I don't have a strong opinion about the naming. Obviously, I echo all the folks that are talking about increasing diversity of the folks, of the people, stakeholders. But I will also say that I think David's comment about how we could bring in other people to speak to the group is a way to increase opportunity to hear from others without necessarily having to have everybody that we would like to see at the table on the actual membership roster. So just some different things to think about. I kind of do like the enact that Amy just mentioned, as far as the I don't know, I can't remember now what you said, but the I-N-A-C-C could be an interesting way of capturing the different verbs.
Yeah, and for me, honestly, I mean, I would probably lean toward changing the name, and I've just been like staring at some of David's acronyms and trying to think of my own, which were no better, and so I just don't know what to change it to yet, and so I just have no real input at the moment. Very much plus, changing the composition of the committee, more autistic people, more like racial, ethnic diversity, background diversity, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's consensus around the table that we want to add additional individuals with autism, that we want to add additional organizations that represent research funding. Particularly since we saw the graph of how much non-governmental research funding has increased. We want to make sure that they're at the table. So, I mean, I think we as a group, expressing the consensus of the group that we want to move in that direction. It is also generally the point that was expressed in the written comments and in the public comments. There were no written comments saying your committee's too big, you should have fewer people. So I think we will definitely try to move in the direction of adding areas where we have gaps. I think we can continue to talk about a name offline. I don't think we have to come up with it at the table, but we can continue to think about what would be an appropriate name. I do think, you know, to Tom's point, we want to recognize that today and in what we're talking about, we are taking a more modern perspective with regard to autism research by including the non-governmental funders whose percentage of funding has gone up relative to overall funding. And also focusing on new areas of investment, including venture capital. I mean, I think it might make sense to think about someone from that Autism Impact Fund who represents a broader portfolio and who might be able to share what the academic community and the philanthropic community and the stakeholder community wants and needs, who could be able to take that back to the companies in that portfolio so that those companies are, one, evidence-based, and two, creating products that will serve the needs of our population as opposed to what they think will serve the needs of our population.
Yeah. So I just, to go back to your original question about the report and what we're gonna be doing, the feedback that I've been seeing in a lot of the kind of the Facebook groups and that I'm involved with, when people are opposed to our group, a lot of the things that I'm hearing is sort of like profound parents, like, what did we need, like the original, the I-ACC has just done nothing for us. You know, we watched them fight amongst each other for 20 years and can't point to one single way their lives have been benefited from all those meetings and the resources that went to that. And I don't know, I don't have strong ideas on how we can avoid, and the thing is like, great, we have a brand, we have a new, now we have competing I-ACC, is this any better? You know, so I think that we need to be more clear about producing like value for families so that they can look at the work that we're doing and not think we're just a lot of academic, you know, or just navel gazing or whatever, you know. So and that may be something, I like the idea of things that are modern and faster paced and responsive. Maybe we have like on our website is more like living documents instead of spending 2 years coming up with a strategic plan. Then what if I loved how David had his like most impactful studies. Like maybe we have a section like that of, instead of waiting 2 years to talk about the most impactful studies of the last 2 years, people can nominate studies that they think have been really impactful. So there's one place to go where people can see, well, what is new in autism research? And it's always being updated. Now, of course, this is labor and I don't know who's doing this, but like, just as a way of, I just think we have to have in our mind when this is over, what did we, and someone says, what was it all for? As opposed to just being mad at Kennedy and what he's doing. I think that we need to be able to point to ways we've made, and I'm biased towards profoundly autistic people's lives better, because those are the families that are in crisis and really struggling and who feel the most that they've been, I think, ignored by the I-ACC, and just that nothing that has come out of the I-ACC has benefited their lives. So I just want that to be kind of at the front of our mind.
Well, let's talk about that more. What would be the definition of value?
Yeah, that's a great question.
We could invite people.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
to provide us with some ideas. Why don't we could have that as an open question, but you know, between now and our next meeting. I do think that it will be important for us to broaden the scope of the funding organizations, to extend from the very basic science, you know, put Simon's Foundation all the way at the end now, since they've got a strategic plan that's kind of pretty focused down there, but all the way to people that are funding projects like we heard from
Yeah.
OAR, okay? To that have a real impact on the care, on the services side. I think making sure that we should between now and our next meeting scope out that landscape of funders and topics that contribute, and it's absolutely the case that the work here on the basic science is not yet contributing value. We have then to be very clear about the fact that it's potential.
Yeah.
Okay, Ari is taking us a little bit closer, and as they work towards that, we don't know whether they're going to succeed. We don't know whether they're going to fail. But through their clinical, the impact groups, they're going to contribute a great deal to providing care and feedback to families. And that is something that, I think you guys do a little bit, but isn't done enough. How participating in research contributes value to all the families who actually participate in research. They get a lot out of being in research studies, and I think a broad swath of the community doesn't actually know that, because we're not good at communicating that. It's really a two-way street. So I think there are things that we could do, but I think we should begin by inviting this, because ultimately it is, when we get outside the research itself to the kinds of companies that are, venture companies, they are going to impact families. They're going to be ideally they take what the researchers do and disseminate it broadly.
I think if you want to think about definition of value, we could look to the CARES Act, and we could look to the activity around the CARES Act. That is an example of when the entire autism community came together to create a law to fund research, to focus on services and delivery. But if we look at what's in that law that the community fought for, it is to write a strategic plan, and it is to make sure that we are reporting, or that the other committee is reporting on
the progress
of research. So, I think if we're going to talk about delivering value, the community has, in some sense, to find that that is of value, because that is what we all were able to come together and agree was necessary. I don't think it's the full extent of delivering value, but I think it should be in there.
So reporting on the results of research, but also we want to be shaping the direction, like on the other way, and saying these are the priorities that we would like to see, instead of basically, we could.
Well, that's what's in the plan.
Yeah.
I think that's one, very necessary. Two, offers Congress an opportunity to have an alternative. And three, reflects the collective view of the breadth of our community in probably one of the few times we were all able to come together and work together towards a goal. So if we're going to talk about value, I would include that.
One of the valuable things for me is that when you listen to everybody here, there's little differences of opinion, but everybody's grounded in a kind of a scientific conceptual model of understanding autism and developing treatments. And I think if there's a value to this group, is somehow articulating that as a kind of grounding piece of what holds it all together, and that there's going to be zigs and zags and new things and old things, but that the durability of that kind of scientific conceptual model is the thing that provides value to the community and would be the reason why this is a great place for people to look to for information and what the latest and greatest is, and including, some of those hot shots. They got to be grounded in good stuff too, because they probably want to be successful. They don't want to be doing crazy stuff. Most of them. So I just think there's something about that's implicit in everything we've talked about today.
Yeah, and I think that even though we may differ on the best strategies to accomplish it, we all agree in the breadth and the broad autism community that we want to improve the lives of autistic people and their families. So maybe that's where we start in terms of value.
The issue of the I-ACC hasn't produced value, right? I said.
I'm not defending them, I'm just saying this is what I'm hearing is that that's the
Yes.
perception.
And
And
it's widespread.
yeah,
And I alluded in my opening remarks to the idea that we thought more would happen
Yeah.
sooner, right? So it's a disappointment. But I guarantee you, there's no group of advocates and scientists who all care about Alzheimer's sitting around a table right now saying, we haven't cured Alzheimer's yet, so we should stop research, right? Or we should confront the research community as if it had done something wrong. That's unique to autism. Cancer advocates don't do it. The Alzheimer's advocates don't do it. The AIDS advocates don't do it. No other group sits around and says, the science hasn't yet produced the answer. Therefore, there's something wrong with the process of science. That's unique to the autism community.
I think that most people believe, or I would like to think that most people believe in the science. I think that the objection to the I-ACC is more the perception of people sitting around fighting over things, and so spending 2 years to come up with like a report that doesn't mean, it's not that they're object to the work that the scientists are doing when they're not sitting at the I-ACC, but just like wondering what the I-ACC in itself is doing and the activities of the I-ACC.
That's why I think this group doing the original mission of the I-ACC better, faster, better, and communicating it more widely is the role.
So let's talk
Right.
about.
I mean, sorry, mind if I jump in? Yeah, so
No.
I mean, just to, and I'll be quick. I think that the real value here, assuming we're talking about our original mission, is publishing these research priorities and this roadmap for autism research. If someone who's a caregiver or a family member is looking at it, is seeing that and seeing that their values are reflected in the research priorities, that autism science is going in the direction that they want autism science to go in. And then, even if there's nothing proximal that's being done right there, hopefully in a few years, autism science will have made their life better.
Can I expound on that? I think that, we did a great job today of establishing our priorities for research but should we also compile more information from the public? Would it make sense to do a survey or something like that too? So it doesn't appear that it's just this committee establishing priorities, but we're really listening to the public.
We could do that.
That's what you research.
Yeah, it's worded a little bit differently, but I think we could do something like that. I will caution that unless you structure your questions.
Spoken like a scientist.
Once you get that, what people desperately want are services. Okay? They want the services themselves. We're focusing on a research agenda. And when you ask the questions about research, you always get back responses around services. So we have to be careful about that because we are not a committee that in any way can deliver on services.
Yeah, it has to be.
Okay,
We're not asking about services.
And help us. You guys could really contribute to how to ask the questions. And I would say you have to do it in a pretty structured way, and provide a little bit, it's not trivial, but I think it should be done.
I think there has to be a pathway between science and policy, then policy that drives services. So I think we can't, I think some of it is lots of research is molecular. And I don't mean that just molecularly, but it's incremental. And I think every place I've been and talked with families, they kind of hate that idea. And that's why misinformation spreads so quickly, is because it's a uniform, singular kind of approach that just gets hammered hard. And we love nuance and we love kind of different perspectives, and all of that's part of the scientific approach, but it makes it harder for people to kind of understand what we're doing. And I just think, we need to learn things about this whole process, but I think we have to link research to policy and policy to services.
It might be just, even if you're describing the molecular type of research that's going on at Simon's, explaining in a way that people can understand what the end goal is of that research. Like, why do we care about this particular gene? Well, this might be the kind of thing, that will translate into genetic targets for interventions. Like, I think I can safely speak for the profound autism community that what we want are interventions for aggression, for self-injurious behavior, for those things that someone said earlier are like they're harder to deal with than the core deficits of autism. Like, we don't care that, our kids are not that social necessarily, and we're happy to, deal with a lot of that thing, but the caring for someone who's a threat to hurt themselves or someone else is extraordinarily challenging. And to know that, like, this particular molecular research maybe has a path to something that's going to benefit us later. Maybe the problem is just in the kind of explaining of the purpose of this kind of very basic science.
Okay, so
The comorbidities.
we're almost out of time, but I do want to talk about what we think the next steps for this committee should be. I think today we heard about a lot of different viewpoints with regard to a research agenda, but there were viewpoints that were missing. Do we want to? I think we've already talked about the need to add more voices. Do we want to have another meeting like this one where we take sort of 15-minute bites on different topical areas before we start to think about putting a plan together? Or what do others think our next step should be?
I agree with that. I think we had an excellent session today, but I think if we're going to add more voices and more perspectives, we should give them the same opportunity we had today.
Okay. David, Zach? You guys in the chat?
I like that idea. Although maybe we want to not right now in the next 7 minutes, but within the next few weeks, come up with a process of identifying what the missing pieces were, and coming to a consensus about who we might invite to share that. Also, if we do ask new members to join, I do think that they also should get the same opportunity that the members here got to describe their research, what they think is important areas of research, regardless of what gaps we identify.
And there will be some time lag for them to go through the disclosure process. Which was quite thorough.
I'm wondering if some of our meetings can be Zoom meetings. I understand the purpose of being here and in person today, but especially if we're going to have another meeting pretty soon and with new people, and maybe we have like our quarterly meetings in person, but in between meetings in between over Zoom, because it's hard to, especially we have and what's good is we have it all over the country, which is a positive. And I'm sure if we add more people, there will also be people, who have big businesses to drive. And even if you don't, it's kind of, even if you're close like we are, it's still hard to kind of set aside a whole,
Maybe we would alternate.
Yeah.
Hybrid.
I mean, in person is good because they had media attention.
No, this was.
There's also
We'll come up
on the
soon. You don't have to come
It's also a meeting. But I do think, I want to just stress to everyone on Zoom that everyone at this table is volunteering their time, no one's getting an honorarium, people pay their own travel. So it might make sense to not have every meeting in person, but to utilize Zoom so that we can meet more frequently.
I think we should begin to sketch out and this work can be done.
Yeah,
via
email.
The scope of this group, and I feel like things have changed. The discussion here has been much more. Today was a very constructive, proactive, exciting opportunity. Although I think indeed when we started, it was going to be, well, we're going to present the counter evidence to vaccines cause autism. And now I'm thinking everyone around the table is so enthusiastic about all the constructive ideas that we can lay out in a strategic plan and begin to monitor the integration of all the this wealth of philanthropic funding and potentially extending beyond that. I think this is a wonderful, constructive opportunity for us. And I see, we can put out a statement that summarizes why we don't believe the vaccines cause autism. And maybe we will not have to waste our time on being responsive. I mean, maybe as a group, we could issue statements, but let's use our time in this much more
positive,
constructive way.
I agree. I feel like today was among the most positive days I've had in a long time because we were talking about how to make progress, where progress has been made, what we know and what we need, as opposed to responding to negative statements and misinformation. I think what we have said today as a group is that we want to move forward with autism research that will benefit people with autism and their families, and that there is a way to do that. I think we heard a variety of ways to do that today. And that's really where we should focus our energy going forward, is to make sure that we're continuing the positive momentum of autism research in service of people with autism and their families.
Is there a way to synthesize like the themes of that? I feel like there were definitely themes you could pull from all the presentations about that would be the beginning kernel of a research agenda. Clearly communication, a huge thing. Interventions for kind of challenging behavior, another thing.
Psychiatric comorbidity.
Yes, a causal, mechanisms, another thing. Like I feel like we could come up with half a dozen things that were articulated today as a beginning, and then kind of as the committee develops and people have time to reflect, maybe we come together and next time people bring to the table things. Well, this is really important, and we didn't discuss it last time because it's not anybody's particular area of expertise, but this is clearly something else that should be a priority. So maybe that catalyzes inviting someone who is expert in that. Like kind of a
Yeah, I think another thing we heard today is the goal of research at making a meaningful difference at the point of care. I think Kristen spoke to that, and you spoke to that.
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna declare victory.
I guess it's one of our questions is what do you want from us going forward? Or do we just await marching instructions?
Well, what do you think?
Coming?
You answer your own question. What do you think you as members should? I mean, I think we will move forward on talking about where we have gaps, and how we might want to set the agenda for the next meeting, who we want to invite to either join the committee or present to us so that we can fill in areas of autism research that we weren't able to hear about today.
Can we have some kind of like listserv or some kind of way of keeping these conversations? I'm a little jealous that the guys on the chat are having snarky side conversations that we were not privileged to. They look really funny. But what I mean is a way that we can keep these conversations going instead of like being totally kind of siloed until the next time we all come together.
Yeah, I think we can set that up. so that we.
There's already a group email.
Yeah, but I think there's a more,
Yeah.
there's gotta be some after that.
Yeah. Do it on Signal and invite somebody from the.
Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for being here today, for contributing your time and your expertise. Thank you to everyone who participated on Zoom. Thank you to everyone who joined us in the room. Particular thanks to those of you who gave public comment. I really appreciate public comment. I always did when I served on the I-ACC. I think public comment is a really important part of this process. So I really appreciate people taking time to make public comments. Do you want to say anything?
I just want to thank everyone also for being here. It's wonderful to meet people in person. So Amy, I do vote for, because I think we have more meaningful communication in context. You didn't listen to my first slide. Communication in context is more effective. So I think, we could alternate.
Yeah, I was suggesting to know it.
This was really exciting, and as I said it earlier, it was the best I-ACC meeting ever.
No one was stuck on their phone or doing email.
Everyone did pay rapt attention, and I appreciate it. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.